In his novel, The Great Divorce, C.S. Lewis describes the narrator's first moments in what we might call the outer courts of heaven. Upon arriving on a bus, yes, a bus, from purgatory or hell, depending upon one's perspective, the main characters find heaven to be painful. Not because of some punishment that awaits them there, but because this main character has never encountered somewhere so real. The grass is so profoundly vivid and true that his uninitiated body cannot bear it. Lewis writes, "It was the light, the grass, the trees that were different, made of some different substance, so much solider than things in our country, that men were ghosts by comparison. Walking proved difficult, the grass hard as diamonds to unsubstantiated feet, made me feel as if I were walking on wrinkled rock, and I suffered pains like those of the mermaid in Hans Andersen." He's referring, of course, to the mermaid in Hans Christian Andersen, who, after having given up her tail and her life in the sea, feels each step on dry ground like knives in her feet. As the Great Divorce proceeds, we learn that the fellow travelers on the bus all perceive heaven in this same way. Heavenly beings come from across the mountains to greet these bus riders and try to help them into the absolute reality of God's presence back over across the mountains. And in order to be able to go with these beings over across the mountains, each person must give up something that he or she holds on to, even after death. Whether bitterness, vice, or pride, each person learns that the only way to go across those mountains, is to give up what holds them back. And it's not as easy as it may sound. Giving up on those obstacles means giving themselves away. It means letting go of attributes that they perceive to most truly describe who they thought they were. Some of them are unable to do so. And so they board the bus and they return to that intermediate place, comfortable in the shadow world that it is. Yet time after time, they have the opportunity to take that trip to heaven again, perhaps staying, a little longer with each visit, releasing their souls to grow a bit more into that reality that goes beyond all reality. The visitors come across the mountains to meet them every time they come up there, drawing out of them what needs to be abandoned, chipping away until there is only left the naked, loved soul, laden with the fruit of forgiveness, who is then able to enter into God's presence for all eternity. The process of pruning the soul is unpleasant. Yet the process of pruning the soul is unavoidable. even the most fruitful of souls remain in the need of cutting back. Without regular thinning, even the most luscious of branches, the most holy of God's people, begins to plateau in its fruit production. Jesus tells his disciples that he is the vine, through whom all life flows. Those who believe in him are the branches, receiving the life that flows from that vine. God the Father is the vine grower who tends the branches, thinning out where the foliage has grown too thick and the fruit production has slowed, pruning out the dead, unproductive wood, cutting back the spindly branches to force them to thicken up and to bear the load of even more fruit. If you know anything about pruning fruit trees, you have to get rid of some of the blossoms in order for fruit to produce. The old rule of thumb is that it's about a fist apart on a branch. You pop off blossoms that are closer than a fist apart so that the fruit that does grow has the nutrients and the space to be the best that it possibly could be. This pruning process, maybe for the trees and then for us, can be terrifying. Like the characters in The Great Divorce who refuse to part with those pieces of themselves that impede their entrance into heaven, we too may fear letting go of parts of ourselves, especially the aspects that are already bearing good fruit, that are in blossom. The coming of the vine dresser, then, meant to be joyful and life-giving, may elicit from us fear and anxiety and maybe even anger. But Martin Luther wrote, "But God is not a tyrant. He is a pious vine dresser who tends and works his vineyard with all faithfulness and diligence, and surely does not intend to ruin it. He does not let his vineyard stand there to be torn to pieces by dogs and wild sows. He tends it and watches over it. He is concerned that it bear well and produce good wine. Therefore, he must hoe and prune, so as not to chop and cut too deeply into the stem and the roots, take off too many branches, or trim off all of the foliage. Let us be unafraid," Luther writes. "Let us not be terrified by the prongs and teeth of the devil and the world, for God will not let them go beyond what serves our best interests." Like Luther, I do not believe that God sends troubles into our lives to prune us. But I do believe that God can take the troubles of this world, the prongs and teeth of the devil and the world, as Luther says, and use them for our good if we allow it. As a seminarian, which was a long time ago now, I had to take courses on church music. And in my first year, in my first class, I sat there bored out of my brain as the professor instructed us on the difference between whole notes and quarter notes. This was insulting to me. I had a degree in music, you see. I had grown up in a boys' choir, singing the great repertoire of the church. I tried my hardest to get out of these classes. And they did let me do some independent study on some subjects that interested me, but they didn't let me off the hook completely. I had to sit through several entry-level courses, and I resented it. I would sit through those classes embittered against the teacher and against the institution that had forced her upon me. Now, God did not send those courses into my life. They were a part of the normal curriculum for every student. But God took those courses and used them to pry away from me some of the self-inflated view I had of myself. To my great astonishment, I didn't know everything there was to know about church music. I was humbled, and out of this humbling, I grew in appreciation for styles of music that never before would I have taken seriously. I learned to point text, which means that I could sing the liturgy even up to this very day. I was cut back in order that I might bear more fruit. Life is full of growth, pruning, and growth again. As one commentator put it, our goal is not merely to hang on to the vine, but to bear fruit, to be more and more productive of fruit, drawing our life and sustenance from the vine to which we remain attached. And so when you leave here and you go out into this day, which I hope is beautiful. You know, we're recording this on a Wednesday, and it's gorgeous today. And I hope your Sunday is as well. But when you leave your homes today and you go out and you mow your grass or you work in your garden, remember that your own pruning could be just around the corner. And so let go of that which slows your spiritual growth. And with those characters in the Great Divorce, take one more timid step out into the verdant reality of God. And maybe this time, the grass won't hurt your feet as much as it did the last.